All right, good morning. Hope everybody's doing all right. So, here's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be taking a look at the subsequent voyages of Columbus. And so, this is going to be a two-part series or two-part notes, I guess, notes and assignment. Here's the thing about Columbus. We know about the first journey, we know about the first voyage. We talked about that last week in pretty good detail. There are three more voyages that Columbus goes on post 1492. These are the ones that the controversy really surrounds. The first journey, the first voyage that Columbus goes on in an attempt to find the Indies and a shorter route to them, that is probably it is the most important of the voyages, but it is also the one that is mired in least controversy. It is the ones that happen after. But here's the thing: most people don't even know that Columbus went to, again, this what he considered to be the Indies. Most people don't know that he went there four different times over a series of about 10, or over a period of about 10 years. Most people just think it was all one time. So again, there's just a lot of stuff that gets thrown together when it comes to Columbus. And it's not just Columbus, it's all of history. Because again, the whole story is much more complicated than just these small little narratives. So we're going to take a look at Columbus. I'm going to hide this real quick. We're going to take a look at Columbus and the voyages after that first journey. Today, we're just going to look specifically at the second journey or the second voyage. Tomorrow, we're going to kind of group together the third and fourth and tie this up and wrap up on Columbus and move forward. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. All right, so takeaways from the first journey. So here's what we talked about last week. Columbus landed in what he thought was the islands known as the Indies, which the Indies are right off the coast of Japan. But in actuality, he landed in the Bahamas. So the Bahamas are right here. As you see, this is the United States. This is Florida. But the Bahamas are right here. We saw from his journal entries, Columbus's journal entries, that he explored these islands. Also went to Cuba, and in later voyages, he is going to explore the rest of the Caribbean, including what he calls Dominicana, which would turn into the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Talks about Jamaica, and then the Lesser Antilles, which are these large groups of islands. If you've ever been on a cruise, you've probably been in this area. Like if you've been on a cruise to the Bahamas, okay, well, that was where Columbus, first in that area is where he first made landfall. If you've ever been to St. Lucia, I've never been on a cruise. The Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. I'm just talking about throwing out ones that I've heard people go on cruises to. Turks and Caicos. I know that sounds like it's a pretty. That sounds like a pretty expensive cruise. I don't know, but this is again the area in which Columbus made landfall for the first time. The land that Columbus talks about in his journal entries talks about the vast natural resources that these islands have. And we're talking about gold being one of the main reasons this journey was sponsored in the first place. Silver, timber, talks about the lush forests. Those trees can be chopped down for lumber, timber. Various plants, fruit, spices, talks about cinnamon, talks about pepper. So again, this is a large economic venture for the Spanish as well. It talks about the natives being timid but relatively peaceful. He talks about how they do not know much about weaponry, but they do have scars over their body, so it looks like they have been in conflict. They talk about the Caribs, um, you know, the native group in this area that these natives are calling cannibals and saying they're very animalistic. So while they are timid and relatively peaceful, there does seem to be some sort of conflict in the area. Columbus talks about how the natives believed in a god, but did not have religion. More so speaks about how them believing in there is like in heaven, and that all these great things are coming from heaven. And with one of the goals being to spread Christianity during this voyage, this would be very important information for the king and queen of Spain to know, because then, as we're going to see here in just a little bit, when Columbus sends his letter, when he documents and talks about his findings, this is going to be a large what's the word I'm looking for here, a large indicator of the types of people that need to go on this second journey. Lastly, Columbus left behind 39 of his men to create the settlement La Navidad. And this is where we begin to realize that this is not just about exploitation or colonization for exploitation, but colonization for settlement. Difference between the two. Settlement, again, you're talking about something permanent. Exploitation, you're talking about taking the goods, the resources, sucking that place dry and then getting out. So we do see some, especially at the beginning of the second journey, we're going to see how that settlement aspect is going to be rather important. All right, let's go to, come on. All right, so sponsoring a second journey. All right, so King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, after writing a letter to the King and Queen of Spain about his findings, Columbus urged the monarchy to sponsor furthest ventures to the Indies. Columbus, I'm going to move my face real quick. Columbus, when he returns to, let's see, where am I going to put myself? No, I'll put myself right here. Yeah, myself right here. So Columbus, when he returns to Spain, the word travels quickly. And Columbus is being, hailed very highly. And he is received with the highest honors in the Spanish courts. And they give him the title Admiral of the Ocean Sea. This is when Columbus is at his most popular and his most loved. It's only going to go downhill from here. So he does get sponsorship and money and goods and supplies and men to go on this second journey back to what he believes is the Indies, those islands right off the coast of Japan, which again, in actuality, we know is the Caribbean islands. So Columbus set sail from Cadiz, Spain, on September 24th, 1493, and landed in the Canary Islands off the coast of Spain. This is what we talked about last time. They did the same exact thing. They go from Spain, and they stop at these islands right off the coast of Spain. A couple different theories there. The first time they had to stop in the Canary Islands because they had to repair one of the ships. There are other theories as to why Columbus stops in the Canary Islands. One is that he has, how do I want to say this? He has a woman that is not his wife that he is in love with in the Canary Islands. We'll just leave it at that. So they land in the Canary Islands, and then they depart again back to the Indies on October 13th. This is actually a Friday the 13th. I looked that up. I thought that was kind of interesting that this journey is going to be a lot different than the first journey, and it's going to have a little bit more. I don't want to use the word controversy because I've already used it. It's going to be a little bit more brutal than the first journey. Not in terms of travel, but in terms of the relations between the natives and the Europeans. So here's the comparison when it comes to the first journey and the second journey. So the first time Columbus was setting sail, obviously this was an experiment and very exploratory, but he was only given 3 ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. This time, and during the second journey, the fleet that Columbus is captaining consists of 17 ships and somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 passengers. And among those passengers is also livestock. So this is where we start to see animals going from Europe to Americas or the Americas for the first time. Or not, I shouldn't say animals going. Well, yeah, animals changing locations. Like some animals that we have in America are not native to America. They were actually brought here from Europe, from Africa, even from Asia. So 17 ships, 1,200, 1,500 passengers, supplies. Talking about more so building supplies and food, livestock. The passengers, and this is where we see that this is more long term. The passengers included priests. This is important because we know that the king and queen want Columbus to spread the word of Christianity. So one, we have farmers. So with farmers, again, they're going to need to grow food. They are also going to need to help sustain a colony. And lastly, we have soldiers. These soldiers are, again, they are there not necessarily to overthrow and overtake the natives, but they are more so there to find gold, because again, the priests and the farmers, they kind of have their hands tied. The soldiers are more there to find gold and to defend their settlement. And again, this reflected the goal of the Spanish monarchy to construct permanent Spanish colonies in the Indies. So again, you're seeing a lot of men going over, a lot of men, no women. This would be important. So let's go to our next one. All right, so trouble, is that the last one? No, okay. Second landing. I'll put my face right here. Yeah, put my face right there. All right, so second landing. Columbus and his fleet made landfall in the Caribbean islands on November 3rd. So the second voyage, it takes about a total of 6 weeks since their departure from Spain. Their departure from Cadiz, Spain, takes about 6 weeks for them to go from Cadiz to the Canary Islands to, again, the New World. But again, that they think that they're going to the Indies. This is compared with the 10 weeks it took in the original journey. First time it took them 10 weeks to go from Cadiz, Canary Islands, to, again, the New World. So we see this is actually a very quick voyage, very fast. That can probably be attributed to navigational skills. And, it's almost like, when you go somewhere for the first time, it feels like it takes forever. On the way back, it feels shorter. I don't know if that's you. I know that's been me. I remember the first time I went to, where was it? This is going to make me sound really old. So, we were going to pick up pizza when I was like 5 or 6. And back then, I lived in Randleman growing up. Back then, there was no Domino's. There was no Papa John's. There was no Sir Pizza. If you wanted pizza, you had to go to Ashboro. Well, we didn't really get pizza that often, other than those little like Totino's or Mr. P's pizza. I mean, that takes me way back. Anyways, there was a Little Caesars across from Randolph Hospital, and my mom said, "Hey, we're going to go pick up some pizza," and I was excited, and it felt like it took forever to get there. And I kind of think about this the same way with Columbus. Again, they are trying to find the Indies. They are trying to find, they're excited about it. And so the first journey takes what feels like a lifetime. But once they get there and they know their destination and they know where they've been, it kind of seems shorter on the way home. It's the way it seemed to me when we got that pizza. It took forever to get there. I thought we would never get there. And it really wasn't even that long of a drive. It was like 15, 20 minutes, but I thought we would never get there. But on the way back, I already knew where we had been, so it felt like we just flew by. Just a personal example for you. So when Columbus lands for the second time, he does sail through the islands of the Caribbean, and he names those islands that he had not visited during his first voyage. He names them appropriately during this one. On November 22nd, he reached the settlement of La Navidad. And when he gets there, he notices that there has been conflict. There has been what looks to be maybe some war or warfare that is going on in his absence. He discovers that the settlement has been destroyed and that 11 of his 39 men that he had left behind have been killed in conflicts with the natives. This is the first time that we really see kind of the writing on the wall. There is going to be large conflict between the natives and the Europeans. We're going to see that this is going to be an ongoing theme. especially during the colonization of America. So we're talking really about, the later on this week we talk about the lost colony, the 1500s, and all through the 1600s and 1700s. We're going to see really kind of the whole time of American history one, because even into the 1800s as well. But we are going to see some native conflict, whether it be Europeans and natives or United States citizens and natives. We're going to see conflict that entire time. Part of this can be attributed to like cultural differences. A large reason I think that there's a lot of conflict between these two groups is language. Language barrier. If you can't understand, uh, if you can't properly communicate with each other, there's going to be conflict. I mean, golly, dude, get married. You'll realize that real quick. If you can't communicate effectively, you're going to have problems. And when you have nothing in common, talking outside of marriage now, you have nothing in common. You look very different. You act very different. You believe different things. You have different, I mean, you have completely different ideas in terms of, warfare, for example. There's going to be distrust, and that distrust is going to manifest itself into physical action, and that physical action is most of the time warfare. So, with La Navidad being destroyed, Columbus created and his men created a new settlement. I got typos in here. So Columbus and his men created a new settlement on the opposite of Hispaniola, which is the name that Columbus gave the island they were on, and he named the settlement Isabella. Yeah, shout out to Queen Isabella. The settlement was short-lived, mainly due to the poor location. There are hurricanes that are going to come in this next year, and they're going to wipe out a lot of this settlement. There's also a lack of gold. Remember, that's probably the biggest venture of Columbus, the biggest motivation of Columbus. Not really for himself, but for the King and Queen of Spain. Like, it is very important for him to find gold. And again, there's a lot of men that he has brought with him, and they do not find gold either. This is their opportunity to achieve, personal wealth, and they're not finding gold. Also, there's conflict with the natives. So this settlement of Isabella is starting to really, really is starting to suffer. And Columbus is going to suffer as well, or along with the settlement of Isabella. All right, let's go to our last one. So this is Trouble in Paradise. I guess I'll just leave my face right here. Let's put my face down here with old Bartholomew. Then I'll move it here in a minute. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So Columbus still wanted to find mainland Japan and China. Again, he had been sailing all through these islands, again, that he thought were the Indies off the coast of Japan and China, but had still not found the mainland. He had found just small islands scattered throughout. But the problem is Columbus's health is beginning to decline, and it is beginning to fail, and the hostilities between the Europeans and the natives is beginning to increase. Columbus then he actually sends a petition to the King and Queen of Spain. Through, essentially he has just, he doesn't sail back, but he sends a letter back to the King and Queen of Spain in order to ask them for permission to take some of the natives into enslavement, or to enslave the natives. He doesn't get an answer in time, or he does get an answer later, but he doesn't get an answer in time for what he has planned. And so he does order his men to enslave the local native population. Of the natives that were on the island, 1,600 of them were taken captive. There's really no easy way to say this. I'm just going to be honest and be blunt. So, of the 1,600 Arawaks that were taken captive, most of them were women and young girls. Now, that kind of poses a question. What was the purpose of these, slaves? It was not for labor. adult men, were actually the least likely to be enslaved. This was not for labor. This was not for uh, women and young girls were taken because, again, Columbus's crew, or the people on Columbus's fleet, are all men. They'd been away from home for quite some time now, and we start to see uh, that animalistic manifestation within the human psyche, or within the human spirit, whenever it gets. Uh, I don't know. It's the women and young girls were taken more so into sex slavery than anything, and that is obviously it's. I mean, obviously it's an atrocious act. But this is not anything new to history. I'm not excusing Columbus and Columbus's men for this, but this is nothing that is unique to this particular event. It's unfortunate. I read something a couple years ago. I'd still have to go back and make sure it's true, but I read something a couple years ago. There's more slaves in the world now than there ever has been in human history. Part of that makes sense because there's more people now than there ever has been in human history. And when we think of slavery, we think of like chattel slavery, like, you know, pre-Civil War slavery in America. But that's not even, I mean, the most common form of slavery throughout the history of the world, and the most common today that still exists is sex slavery. So uh yeah, anyway, so there were 500 of these imprisoned Arawaks, that's the name of the tribe, that were sent back to Spain in order for the king and queen to kind of examine. These more so were this was actually men, women, and children that were sent back on board. 200 of them died on the ships. 300 actually made it back to Spain. Uh, this is actually going to be a large indicator of what is to come, because there we're going to see sickness start to infect the natives, and that's just because they're not immune to European diseases. And now that are on these ships with Europeans in close quarters, we're going to see how those diseases spread amongst a very isolated population. During this time, the settlers are beginning to doubt Columbus's ability to lead, not only because his health is failing, but also because the conflict with the natives, the lack of gold, the fact that they're not growing plentiful crops, and the lack of supplies. So again, much like we saw with Columbus from the first journey, as time goes on, they become more and more weary of Columbus actually being this leader and this great admiral, and you know they really start to doubt that, and we start to see an attempted mutiny almost to that point until Columbus decides to go back to Spain. He decides to set sail back to Spain in order to ask the Spanish monarchy for more supplies. And the reason he wants to do that is so he can, again, further establish this colony. Columbus takes 3 ships, takes 200 men, goes back to Spain, and names his brother Bartholomew as governor to keep the colony in order. So there's where we're going to stop today. Make sure that you read the letter from Columbus to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. It gives us a good insight on how accurate Columbus's journal entries are. So we kind of have almost 2 primary sources. So read that, check it out. Tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to finish up Columbus and his expeditions, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about Bartholomew Columbus as well, and how he and his brother are going to find themselves in some deep trouble. All right. See you guys then. I got to figure out how to pause this.